Afternoon, adventurers. The audio from the intro that I recorded previously got a little corrupted, as well as a little bit down the line. So here I am in different clothes, saying hello. And welcome back to the Divine Soul Metamagic series. We're here with first level spells today. So I'm going to launch right into it with Bless and Bane. These two spells are functionally similar, just one is a buff and one is a debuff. They both kind of fall into the same vein otherwise. Something I like to do with these spells is quicken them, and then follow up with a damage cantrip. Either bless myself and some party members, and follow up with an attack roll spell like Firebolt or Chill Touch, and get that extra 1d4 on my attack roll. Or alternately cast Bane on some enemies, and then whichever ones fail the saving throw, or whichever one, cast a spell like Toll the Dead, and they'll have that minus 1d4 on their saving throw. Bonus points if you have two enemies fail the Bane and you twin a damage cantrip on them. Or alternately, bless yourself and then twin a damage cantrip with an attack roll. Either way. Speaking of the twin spell Metamagic, there are several first level spells that really shine with it, notably Healing Word and Cure Wounds. Anytime you can heal multiple creatures at the same time is way better than healing one, especially because it only costs one sorcery point for a first level spell. So, being able to heal two creatures for, say, a d8 plus 3 or 4 or whatever your modifier may be, is very literally twice as good as healing just one creature for that. Even better if you have a level of Life Cleric, and you can restore an additional 2 plus the spell's level on top of that to both those creatures. While I'm doing reshoots, I also forgot to mention the first time around, you can cast Cure Wounds as a distant spell, giving it a range of 30 feet, which can be helpful if you have only taken Cure Wounds and not Healing Word. Spells known is one of the limiting factors for a class like Spellcasters, so having one that can basically do the job of both could be helpful for your build. Personally, I always choose Healing Word over Cure Wounds because of its greater range and because it's a bonus action, even though it gives a little less healing. That's just my preference. So distant Cure Wounds is another pretty good option. Similarly, any single target buff spell works great with twin spell metamagic. These are things like Shield of Faith, Protection from Evil and Good, and Sanctuary. Being able to use it on two creatures, 100% better than using it on one creature. Shield of Faith can also benefit from the extended spell metamagic, doubling its duration from 10 minutes to 20, which should be long enough to get into multiple fights if you're, say, walking into a dungeon and you cast it. By dungeon, I mean literally a dungeon, or like the caves that some goblins live in, or bandits, or an encampment of orcs or ogres, or whatever the case may be. You cast a buff at the start, like Shield of Faith, that lasts for a while, and you wander in, and you fight it up. The extended spell metamagic can also apply pretty well to the Detect family of spells. This is Detect Magic, Detect Poison and Disease, and Detect Evil and Good. So these spells also have a duration of 10 minutes, which can be doubled to 20. You could even, if you have a level of Cleric or the Ritual Caster feat or some means of casting one of these spells as a ritual, that is Detect Magic or Detect Poison and Disease, you also have the option to cast the spell, either as a ritual or not for the first one, spend that sorcery point to extend it to 20 minutes, and then spend the latter 10 minutes casting it as a ritual again, and use a sorcery point to double its duration to 20 minutes, and use the latter 10 minutes, my hand's off the camera, that's okay, the latter 10 minutes to cast as a ritual, spend a sorcery point to double its duration, and chain it that way. If you want it to benefit from the effects of the spell for an extended period of time, you can chain it together that way. Again, how useful that's going to be to you is going to be up to you, but it is an option that most casters don't get. On the more social side, we have the spell Command, which is also useful in combat for taking a creature's action away and making them do something that they don't want to do. But it can also be used in social interaction, especially as a subtle spell, because the verbal component of command is not the same as the actual word that you give as a command. Which is to say, your character spouts some arcane mumbo jumbo and then says kneel or flee or drop or whatever the command may be. So taking away the arcane mumbo jumbo makes it sound like you just say to someone like, hey, approach, and then they feel compelled to do so. Or they succeed their wisdom save and they don't feel compelled to do so, whatever the case may be. Being able to cast as a subtle spell makes it more possible in social situations where casting a spell may put people off to your presence. Subtle spell is also very useful for preventing yourself from being counterspelled by enemy spellcasters and taking away an enemy spellcaster's action, actually their whole turn, can be huge in combat. Even at higher levels, especially at higher levels. If someone's about to drop a cone of cold on your party, but you beat them in initiative and you manage to land a command on them, so they lie on the ground instead of casting a spell, that is huge. So, subtle spell for not getting counterspelled. In a similar social vein, we have Purify Food and Drink. This is a good spell for if you think you're about to be poisoned. If you're having a conversation with someone who might not be on the up and up, and they offer you, wine or something, and you think, that wine's probably poisoned, or that food's probably poisoned, or someone's trying to assassinate the king by poisoning his meal. Purify Food and Drink. But again, if you're in a situation where the people that you're with might not approve of spells being cast, a subtle spell saves the day. You can just purify the food in front of you without giving any sign that anything has changed, and then watch as the mob boss you're talking to, I don't know, is very surprised when your party lives and doesn't even seem bothered by what was previously a poisoned meal. Speaking of food and drink, it's important to stay hydrated, and the Create or Destroy Water spell is perfect for that. You can create water in a container or make it rain. Make it rain! But while you can cast the spell as a distance spell or a subtle spell, often I don't really think there's reason to do so, as it's very much a utility thing. If you're not close enough to the container that you're trying to fill or empty, or the area you're trying to rain on, most of the time you're just going to walk closer. So you can use those things, but it's usually not going to be necessary. Xanathar's Guide to Everything adds Ceremony, a somewhat interesting spell that lets you marry people together, or do a coming-of-age ritual, or make holy water, which gives the Sorcerer an option to make holy water, where previously only Clerics and Paladins could do that. So that's good, but it doesn't really get affected by Metamagic. Because of the casting time of the spell, you can't quicken it or anything. The range is touched, so you could cast it as a distance spell, but in most cases, again, you're not going to need to, because the people going through the ceremony are probably going to be right in front of you. The only Metamagic option I can see being useful for ceremony is the twin spell Metamagic, because the Atonement, Coming of Age, Dedication, and Funeral Rite ceremonies can be twinned, and the spell does consume 25 gold pieces worth of powdered silver, so being able to cast it on 2 creatures at once saves you a bit of money. That's worth a sorcery point. But that's about all you can do with the spell. So we're going to move on to Inflict Wounds. Inflict Wounds is a spell that lets you make a melee spell attack, against a creature dealing 3d10 necrotic damage. That's quite a bit for a first level spell. I saved this one for last on purpose, because there's a lot you can do with it. It has a range of touch, so you can cast it as a distant spell to give it a range of 30 feet. Useful if you don't want to get into melee with somebody, but you want to deal the best damage you can with your first level spell slot. You can also twin it onto 2 creatures. You can quicken it, and then follow up with, say, a Shocking Grasp cantrip, another melee attack that is available to sorcerers. Of course, you can use the Seeking and Empowered metamagics also, as it is a damaging spell with an attack roll. You can also cast it as a subtle spell, which is interesting if your character is going to act like they don't know what happened. If you, say, go to shake someone's hand and they just die or are injured, you could pretend to investigate the cause of this thing, kneel down and check for a pulse, do CPR, roll your medicine check, whatever the case may be there, and roll the casting of that aggressive spell into the scene itself without necessarily starting a fight. That's something you and your DM would have to work out, something to talk to them with, because typically anything that involves attacking and damaging creatures happens in initiative. But from a narrative standpoint, I think it's really funny to just necrotic handshake somebody. And with that, that is all of the first level spells available to clerics. So that wraps up this video. Thank you for watching so much. And if you want to see the next parts, you should probably hit subscribe, because the algorithm doesn't know who I am yet, so it probably won't recommend the next ones. Yeah. Leave a like if you want. It's your life. You don't have to. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.